Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And if you want to touch base with me, you can do it via Twitter at DRVIBESHOW. And you can email me at dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. We are continuing our series, bi-weekly series, black men and hypermasculinity to healthy masculinity, or as we like to say, yeah, I got it right, H to H, hashtag. And the driving force behind this is Dr. Charles Corprew. He is with us again. And it was funny. Yesterday, I sent him a message saying, are we on for tomorrow night? And he goes, Doc, I didn't know, like, you got so many shows happening. I don't know if I said, no, I made the commitment that we're going to do this every 2 weeks. So I caught him off guard in a good way. So he's back again with us tonight. He's going to share a little bit about himself and a little bit about this ongoing series. And then he's going to give us an introduction to tonight's conversation. I'd like to say thank you to the people who are already on the program tonight. Glenn Barker from the Mankind Project in Chicago, a mentor of mine, a former co-host of the Weekly Manhood Show that him and I did for a while, along with Dr. Marvin Thompson, which I'll be continuing tomorrow night because he's going to knock my head if I don't. So also the Empress Says, and also C. Will. Shout out to C. Will. Him and I did a back-to-back scopes as part of a Black History Hour on Periscope last Saturday, and it was an honor to be followed by him. It was a tall order, but I did my best. So, Dr. C, what is up, and share a little about yourself.
What's up, Doc? How you doing?
Everything blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Got to get that in.
Got to get that in. Got to get that in. So, appreciate you, Doc. Always happy to be here with you. It's always this hour, and it always seems to go by fast as we talk about issues that we've discussed that are pertinent to how men, and then particularly Black men, go from hypermasculinity to healthy masculinity. And that's why we've inspired this series of shows that you and I have had over the last couple of months to have these conversations in hopes that men can have these honest conversations, or at least go back and say, you know what? I heard these brothers talk, or I heard these brothers and sisters dialogue about a variety of things that might be going on in my life. And now I have the ability to open up, or I can do certain things that I couldn't do because, I saw some other people saying that they could do it, or we provide them with some avenues. And so hopefully tonight we get to that, as we talk about men, and particularly Black men, and their, mental health, and then leading to what we want to go is to well-being. And that's where we want to move to. As we talk about from hypermasculinity to healthy masculinity, we have to move from mental health issues to well-being. And how do we get through the issues and strife that may face us to a point that we can handle them, be mentally tough, and have positive well-being? And so that's the premise of the show, Doc, that we have discussed, is that this is a tool. This is something in the arsenal for men to have, to look back, to say, I found something great in that show, a small tidbit that's going to help me change or revolutionize my life. But not only that, but someone else's life, because they saw a change in me.
And I want to add that this program is not just for men. The ladies can jump in too, because they're an important component on this. And even before we went live tonight, two ladies were already ready to go and already providing us with comments. So we're hoping that they jump on, or at least provide additional commentary. So Dr. Charles, do you want to catch up from this is part two? Do you want to summarize what we did in part one, and want me to take that for you?
Yeah, well, we can talk about it, Doc. As I was preparing for the show tonight, I was looking back at our notes and just want to think about why it's important to talk about mental health, particularly for men. And I think the last time that we talked is that we began to look at what are some of the mental health issues that men may be facing. We talked about depression, anxiety, substance abuse, suicide. There's some interesting statistics that I was reading, and I will reiterate them, Doc. Particularly men 15 to 24, the third leading cause of death for African-American males is suicide. I found it quite interesting, and that about 5 to 10% of African American males may suffer from some mental health issue during their lifespan. And so these are things that we need to begin to talk about, because what's happening is that population of men, and the interesting piece, as I would teach my students, Doc, is that those are the statistics that are actually out there that we actually can empirically see. So it's 5 to 10%, but that number is actually much higher, Doc, because what happens is that men don't talk or go to seek help for anxiety or depression. And those are things that we talked about last week, is that what happens is that when we encounter these things, we look for alternative avenues to allow them to manifest instead of going to get help often, or we don't find the right avenues, because as men, the term is, man, just man that up, man up, take care of that, handle that yourself. You're a man. Men don't get depressed. Men don't get anxious. And so how do we handle that, Doc? And so we spent a copious amount of time last on the show a couple of weeks ago just talking about that, and not really even getting to the point of how mental health issues manifest in men, just about what they are and why men may not seek. We didn't even delve too much into that. So hopefully we can get to those issues today, as well as moving down the road to well-being. And what are some of the practices that can be in place that help men have positive well-being?
Excellent. Yeah, that's where we left off last week in regards to basically we're getting to the conversation piece of how do mental health issues such as depression manifest in men. And in our notes, we have usually contrary to diagnosable characteristics. So let's start from that platform and continue on. So how do these issues develop as depression manifest in men? And also the viewers, whether you're on Periscope, whether you're on Blab, whether you're on the Dr. Vibe site, please, more than welcome to provide commentary. We already have a question. So I don't know if you want to take a look at to address that question already, or do you want to get into okay, let's get right into the question, because that's the way it happens. Do Black men know they are, well, okay, the Empress says, do Black men know they're mentally ill? You need to expand on that. That's I need a little bit more.
Just come on the show and ask the question, Doc.
That would be the best way. And I encourage, it's one way to ask questions in the commentary section, and we have to interpret, but it's when you come on the screen and you get to actually share it live. Here we go. Ask and we shall receive. Here we go.
You shall.
Hello. How are you, Empress? Blessed, highly favored, magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem.
Yes, and what I was asking in that question, I'm glad that we're admitting that there are mental health issues in the Black male community, because I find that it's not that common for men to admit that they have any level of issue or problem, but particularly mental illness. I mean, that's taboo, period, in Black community, but specifically with Black men. What I meant by that question is, do they even know that they have a mental issue? Because just like Dr. C just said earlier, manning up is what is acceptable for poor mental processing. And sometimes even acting out in a extremely just crazy way is acceptable if that male community accepts that as being masculine. Whereas with a woman, it's very commonly thrown around. If she gets out of line, out of order, sometimes it's not even mental instability, it's more emotional. And they call us crazy all the time. So that's what I was hoping that you would address. Do men even know that they have mental instability? Maybe would be a better question than mental illness.
Well, I think that, I always say this, is that information is power. And I think about, the various stages of mental health that I have been through. I have a PhD in psychology now. so I can identify things that may be going on in my life or in someone else's life because I have that training. I say all that to say is that people who are ill-informed or misinformed or uninformed may not know the symptoms that go along with mental illness or mental health issues. Particularly with staying on the depression, understanding what are the signs of depression: low sexual function, again, low libido, low interest, either a huge appetite or loss of appetite, loss of interest in, things that you usually like to do, things like that. But putting that all together and understanding it, I think that we live in an information age where you can garner facts about mental illness very quickly, but identifying them may be a challenge, particularly if you're not looking for them. You may have 1 or 2 or 3 of the symptoms of depression, but may not be able to identify that. And men may not go looking for that, because what happens is that if we look at our general health or our physical health, men may not go looking for what these symptoms may lead to. So, for instance, with high blood pressure and diabetes, there may be sexual dysfunction, which may lead to depression. But men may not go and look for the underlying causes to their mental health or even physical ailments. And so we have to begin, and that's one of the premises for the show, is that we have to begin to inform. These are some of the issues that are happening with men, and you need to be able to hopefully identify them, and that our community understands that. I think that's how, some of the health disparities that we see in our communities is that we are misinformed, ill-informed, or uninformed, and so we have to think about that. If you're a young man who's 15, 16, 17 years old, how are you going to then, particularly if you might be suffering from depression or anxiety, if you don't have the facts, how are you going to know? And so we have to inform our communities, what to look for, particularly in men, when they may be having some mental health issues.
Empress, you have a follow-up comment?
That sounds. I mean, you're a clinician, so I do understand that. I've worked in mental health as a nurse from afar, and it's just not even an option. A lot of the times, it's not even something that people want to admit, because at some point you have to admit that what you're doing and how you're functioning is not producing whatever you're looking for it to be. And the whole essence of manhood, I'm not one, but I will say that most men, I would think, and from what I have counsel with, they calculate what their manness is by what they can produce. And sometimes just scratching it and starting over is acceptable in a male's life, with just the obvious things, what you make, the types of things you're surrounding yourself with. But when you come to the mind, which is not a tangible type of functionality, sometimes it just takes them to break. They get to the point of break, where as a woman, we're allowed to have that say. We're allowed to cry. I mean, Black men, you better not cry, and you better not tell nobody about it, because they're going to out you and emasculate you by your own group of peers, not even women. I'm talking about your own group of peers do that type of thing to you. But I would say that, I don't think that many Black women are so removed that we don't recognize that they have issues that are greater than we could even understand. But actually, this show was just so perfect to hear, some of the feedback, because I'm doing one tonight that's not related to mental health, but just the way that men think, particularly Black men think. If it's not healthy, then what you're going to produce is an unhealthy expectation from the women that you are with. And I think it's a part of why there is a lesser number of Black men with Black women, because some of it is just plain mental health, not being able to cope with where they are, what this world has offered to them, and what they can identify themselves as men for, we Black women. So,
well, I mean, you make some very valid points, and some very, very valid, and so how men cope. And so particularly with mental health issues, coping doesn't, look like, particularly as you said, in comparison to women, how men cope, with mental health, as we'll talk about, rage, womanizing, substance and alcohol abuse, things like that, disengagement from life, rebellion, are things that you'll see that happen when men, because it manifests differently. Like you said, in our society, when you're told to man up, rage and anger and rebellion are masculine traits. You want to rebel from this. I don't need you. I don't need this. As you said, I can do something else. I don't. And so that rebellion of what, our expectations are. And as you said, creating new expectations, and you think about the expectations that are placed on African-American people, both men and women. And so you think about some of the issues that we face, black on black crime. We look at the statistics that rise for men and women who live in neighborhoods where crime, where there's a high rate of violence against a person. And so you have these PTSD, you have depression, you have anxiety, you see this. But how does that then manifest? What happens is that we see an increase in violence, because that fear and depression, I can't say that I'm scared. And when I give talks, you can't be seen as the sheep amongst the the wolves. And so it manifests differently. And so the point is, how do we have these conversations that we're having with our women, and to help them understand, because there's also a level of misunderstanding between men and women when it comes to men and their mental health issues and how they deal with that. There is that societal and cultural expectation that, okay, you still need to take care of what you need to take care of. And so, as Doc and I have talked before, is that there are points in times where we just need to lay our head down and say, I'm scared, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just need your support. And that's what happens when you have a good partner. And I was fortunate, very, very fortunate, to have an amazing partner for 7 years who understood that, that I could lay my head down. And so that's what happens. You need that support and understanding from your partner, but also from your peers. And I think that's critical. But that's what this show is for, to have this type of dialogue. But to go back to your first question, do Black men know that they have mental health issues? It's a very tough question. Like I said, I answered it at first very clinically. I can't say 100% that we actually know in the moment that this is what's happening with us. We need to have the information to really help us, think through what's going on.
Anyone else? Anything else you want to add with the Empress? You good? You're puckering up. It sounds like you're happy.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for sharing, and have a great conversation later on tonight.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you for making the program better. So, we're already on line to look like we're having a part 3. You know that already, Charles, after that, which is not a bad thing at all. That's a good thing. Just want to shout out to some people out there who have joined the conversation at Ebony Renee. Thank you for always taking some time. New friend of the show, Archie Hudson Jr. I may have seen you on one or two of the blabs. Of course, Galen from Leaders Residue, and also Van Sleeger. Thank you so much. Great and timely information. Well, thank you so much. Do come back anytime. So you mentioned one of the reactions is rage, and another is anger. I don't know if you touch on the anger piece, but are there any other reactions that you see that and we put in the notes here to you and I, usually contrary to diagnosable characteristics? Are there any other things that manifest in Black men when it comes to depression and mental health that we don't know? Or
one of the things is that depression, mental health is seen as a feminine feminine trait or feminine incident. I'm trying to think of the best word. Something that happens to females. And so in that sense, men may try to increase their level of masculinity. And so that's where we get to the point of hypermasculinity. And so womanizing is a piece of that. Having multiple women in your life and having those expectations for yourself that I need to showcase my masculinity, that possibly sexing my way out of these feelings. If you have, the ability or wanting to have sex, you will then begin to womanize or have multiple partners to try to get yourself out of that funk. But there's an issue with that, Doc, is that part of that depression, and particularly if you're not dealing with that, is also the opportunity to have low performance. Low performance, and you understand what I'm saying? So yeah, erectile dysfunction, things may happen through that. And so that just exacerbates the depression, because if you're having low performance or erectile dysfunction, because particularly with depression, there is a loss of sexual libido, you may have erectile dysfunction. And so that begins to tear down your manhood even more. So it becomes a vicious cycle, as we talk about, particularly with depression, because you can't seem to find an avenue that actually is going to resonate with you and lift you out of the fog and funk. It was interesting having a conversation with a colleague and detailing her experience with a man who was actually experiencing depression, and then through the depression, actually experiencing erectile dysfunction. And so it was very tough on the relationship. So you think about that in that vicious cycle where all of this is happening because of the mental health issue. They're having relationship issues. They're having sexual problems. And so there doesn't seem to be a fix. And so now the mental health issue is not only affecting him, it is affecting her and their overall relationship. And so it becomes problematic. It becomes problematic because the man is not seeking the proper help. It is manifesting in a negative way, Doc, that leads to more mental health issues.
And it's interesting in this whole, there are different areas, like you have that syndrome of men going to the cave.
Yes.
They go
Very good analogy.
They go to their cave. And, and I've mentioned it on programs before, and I know that Glenn knows I've mentioned this before, but we have this terminology for men, they're man cave.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times they go there to get away from the world, or maybe because they're either afraid of something or something is eating at them. It's not always to go watch football or baseball or listen to music. That's an auxiliary.
Right.
But they go to their man cave because they don't know how to handle some things, and they shun away. So as you had mentioned, in some of the ways that men respond to depression is anger and rage. Sometimes it's the opposite end of the
isolation.
spectrum.
Yeah, like I said, disengagement and isolation. Yes. I actually thought you were talking about the metaphorical man cave. It was very interesting when I was running a program at James Madison about 10 years ago. One of our teenage participants suffered from depression, and he would talk about falling down into the rabbit hole, and falling down, and that he couldn't get out of the rabbit hole, and the rabbit hole seemed to be closing, but he couldn't get out, because if he could get out, he could get past the depressive symptoms. But the rabbit hole just encapsulated him, and he felt bad. We had to get him psychological services while he was there with us. But it was a very interesting analogy, hearing him say that I go into this hole. And that's what I thought you were referring to, Doc, is that metaphorical space, that isolation that we have, to allow us to try to figure it all out, if possible.
Another great conversation piece coming up. And as I said, we're probably looking at a part 3 already on this. And hey, that's not a bad thing. That's why we're doing this series of conversations. Leaders Residue asks, is there a comparison between black male depression and PTSD for war vets, or is that a stretch?
I don't think it's a stretch per se, and I don't want to particularly say black male depression. It's called major depressive disorder, and it happens to men, women, and so we don't want to put race to it. But depression is a part of PTSD, so it's not a stretch. And you'll see anxiety, you'll see night terrors, you'll see depression that goes along with PTSD. And depending on, I think leaders residue Galen. I think if we think about what some of our young brothers experience growing up in, challenging situations or challenging communities, they're experiencing PTSD. And as we've talked about on the show previously, there have been some studies done down here in New Orleans that younger students, as young as 7, are experiencing PTSD because of where they're growing up. And so it becomes challenging. And think about experiencing PTSD from that young age, where you're seeing people die, you're seeing people victimized. And so you develop that fear and hyper bravado or hyper masculinity to cope, but you're not really handling or dealing or coping effectively with those stressors.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, and I know you just emphasized about younger men, but it's prevalent in the older ones too.
It is.
And a lot of time, and I'm sure through your studies and your viewings, the leader's residue says survival instincts take over.
Exactly, survival instincts take over, and that's why we see depression manifest differently, in men, because showing weakness, as you go back to, is what Galen said. Showing weakness is not an instinct for men.
Now, let's just talk about that. Just at that point, why can't this barrier be broken, in your opinion? Like, it goes along the weakness part, because when a lot of people think about men in depression, they think about weakness. Why can't we break this stigma?
Well, there's a man code. I know that you and Glenn have talked about it for extensively on you all's show, but there is a man code. There's a rigor that goes along with being a man, and then if we place being a black man, there's a rigor that goes along with that, and that's that barrier right there. There's that box that we must stay in to be perceived as strong and manly and protector, provider, all of the things that society says to be a man. But then as well, to be black and male, what does that mean? And so it means to put things on your shoulders, to put them on your back and carry them. And so what happens when you can't carry them? It becomes very, very hard. But who do you have to talk to when you feel the box crumbling? And like I said, I was very fortunate to have a great partner that when times got rough, she was there. She was there to provide the support that I needed to go through those rough periods of time. But if you don't have that, and you don't have that safe space, and particularly with other men, and I think that I've garnered that as I've gotten older, because men finally have the ability to say, you know what, I'm in my 40s, I got stuff that's going on, I got stuff that's bothering me, and I can't just keep this in. And when you hear that brother say, you hear that brother be vulnerable enough to say something, it's your opportunity to say, you know what, damn it, I'm going through the same thing, man. Can we talk about this? And in this, and that's when you open up dialogue. And so there's a stigma behind having mental health issues, as well as, go ahead, Doc, you want to ask something?
No, I just want to add, because it's something that's running through my mind. This stigma enters a young man's life very, very young. And if he doesn't, for lack of a better term, break the cycle, then it just becomes more and more ingrained, and it becomes more challenging to break the cycle each day that it goes on.
Right.
because it's interesting because how challenging it must be for a young man of color who's going through mental health challenges to even hang out in his peer group. And and I think that the rejection or the challenge he has dealing with it amongst his peers can be just as challenging or more challenging than the actual depression itself.
It can be, but think about, let's throw sexual orientation into that mix and how that challenges. And so you're dealing with sexual orientation, which may lead to, as you search for that identity, particularly in adolescence, you're searching for that. You don't have a peer group particularly to talk through this, and I have to say, and this is, again, an anecdotal statement that I'm ready to make, but it seems like the younger generation of students that are coming, or adolescents that are coming through, have a larger peer group that have a variety of expressed sexual identities. And so they may have opportunities to talk through this with their peers who may be going through. So I see a more openness where more students, more young adolescents are coming out earlier and not feeling like they need to stay in the closet, which is good. But I think if you're battling with that and you haven't been able to come out and express your sexual identity and sexual orientation, you're struggling with that. And that may lead to that depression. So you don't have a peer group to deal with any of the situations that you may be having. And that's why we see 15 to 24, third leading cause of death is suicide. So we've got to be able to say it's okay to break that barrier, no matter who you are, no matter sexual orientation or what, to be able to say it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay actually to be who you are. And so that's the biggest thing. Be who you are and allow people to help you.
Understood. Let's continue on with another conversation piece. What are some of the barriers that impede Black males from seeking the help that they need to address their mental health needs? And the first one you've listed was stigma behind seeking therapy. Let's go deep into this one. It's very true, I think, not only just Black men, but men in general.
And that's interesting. And I'm going to throw the disclaimer out that I love my therapist, but I think one of the stigmas that go with why men don't go, particularly Black men don't go to therapy, is that there's a misunderstanding that the therapist may not be culturally relevant, culturally aware, or culturally competent to even have the conversation about what's going on, and so that's a question that if I'm interviewing a therapist, that I need, that's the first question I had. Have you ever had a Black male client? What are some of the issues that Black men face that you have been able to help them through? And so having that cultural competence is key, Doc. I have the ability to talk with my therapist about a variety of things. And he has that understanding, and there's a level of trust. And so that's another thing. Men are not as trusting with people because this is a level of vulnerability that you have to have with a therapist, with someone that you don't know who acts as a third party or another party that is going to give you advice. And so you have to have a level of trust. And so that goes along with that barrier. Why should I trust you if I don't know you? And you're going to give me advice? I don't know you. And so we are reticent about trusting others, particularly when it comes to our vulnerabilities. And so it takes time. And I've been with my therapist almost 2 years now. Amazing guy. I can tell him anything and he can say anything to me and I listen. And so it takes time to build those relationships with anything, but often we don't trust enough to take the time to even think about going, because you've got to then, to really be good, to really get the help that you need, Doc, you've got to be naked.
And I'm just going to build on that, because the whole trust and vulnerability piece when it comes to this conversation is huge. And a lot of men in general, let alone trusting themselves, trusting somebody else, with their emotions, feelings, their wherewithal, that's a huge piece.
It's huge.
And something that I've said in previous conversations, and I know Glenn is listening, so he'll know I've mentioned this before. We always use the term intimacy, but I always say intimacy. Right. So before a man can get to that point, that juncture, saying, you know what, I need help, they got to get intimate with themselves emotionally. Right. And periodically, I will go up to one of my mentors and I will go to my mentor and say, you know what, I need help. Because I'm going to say it here that there are many men that are having a mental heart attack.
Somebody needs to tweet that out. Yes, a mental heart attack.
All right. So what I mean by this is when one has a heart attack, their heart and their body are out of sync. When everything's right, your body's right, your heart are happening in sync. When men have a mental heart attack, what's going on in their heart and what's going on in their mind are disconnected. It's an attack. There's not a strong flow between their head and their heart. That's a number of men that I know right now are going through. Saw one yesterday, a mental heart attack. So I just wanted to drop that.
And that's the piece, if I can delve back to what you just said, Doc, is that the vulnerability of saying that I need help. I need help. And that's a very interesting thing for a man to say, because we're not taught to ask for help. I need help. You need to be able to build this on your own, do the things that you need to do, and to ask for help is seen as a sign of weakness. But to me, it is the greatest strength to be able to say that I don't know everything, that I need to ask for help to be successful. And that's the interesting thing. You're particularly what I've learned in building this business that I've been growing for the last year is that I can't do it all. I can't go out and be the ultimate consultant. That I have to ask for help. I have to ask for other people to come partner with me who are much more equipped in certain areas than I will ever be. But knowing that will allow us to be successful. Not just me, but us. And so having that wherewithal to say, just because I have 3 letters behind my name, I have a terminal degree, it doesn't make me the smartest person in the room. The greatest thing I ever did was say, I can't do this alone and I need to ask for help. And that was the same thing with going to see my therapist, is that I was in a situation where I couldn't figure out what the resolution was. And I needed help. And I was going through some mental health issues that were manifesting in some of the ways that we've talked about. And I needed help. And so that was the biggest thing, finally asking for it.
The big ask. Yeah, the big ask. And you know what's great, though? If a man is intimate in himself and is able to do that, the weight starts coming off of him gradually. Let me just get C. Will Inspire in here. It's such a weight off a man when, if he's intimate himself, he says, you know what, I need help. And it just is such an encouragement. C. Will Inspire you. Oh, here he comes. Hey, C. Will, what's up?
I said, I'm doing good. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're good, brother.
I am blessed, highly favored, Manic for Miracles, and I need to sharpen up my Periscope game after you just drowned me out on Saturday.
No, I did not, Doctor. You were on point. I had like an hour's worth of material, and I was just trying to jam it into 10 minutes. So it was fun, my first one, but definitely did an awesome job there, Dr. Rod.
Right back at you. What do you have to
So
share tonight?
while
with
we're
the
talking,
conversation?
and you know, the where you started, you know, framing this was Dr. C was about, you know, how do you start to apply solutions. And so I've been thinking about that the whole time you've been talking. I've been listening to you, and you do, you know, you're a doctor, and this is how you focus. And so a lot of it is clinical, right? The path, it seems, that you're offering a lot is how to get there, you know, and how to accept that that's okay. And I think that's good, but I think it is also a big leap for a lot of people. And so I'm thinking one of the one solution that came to my mind is, which you did mention, is safe spaces and safe relationships. And when I say that, I mean people that you can talk to honestly, right? People you can really share your vulnerability with, and then groups, you know, when I say spaces, you know. And so you're fortunate, like you said, to have a partner that you're able to just be real with. You know, I don't know the answer. Can you just let me be, you know, weak right now? I don't know what to do, and I just feel, you know, that this is how I feel. And the reason I went to the safe spaces place is because I see this a lot in different places, but it's not accessible to everybody. In other words, a lot of times you have a men's group in churches, but of course, if you don't go to church, or if you don't believe in that, then that's not for you, right? And then you got people who are in recovery. They have their support groups and places that they can vent. And but the majority of the young men that I had to deal with weren't participating in any of those things, right? And so a lot of times, which, you know, exacerbates the problem, is they find that support in other men who are having the same problem and are acting out in ways, as you have said, right? You know, violently or reasserting their manliness, you know. But, you know, I just wanted to offer that thought as far as, because this is what I'm in the process of doing now, is designing what I like to call systems of support, right? And
Very nice.
yeah, and helping people set that up, you know, and do you have someone you can talk to? And if you don't, you need to find somebody, you know. And the final thing I'll say, then I'll let you respond, is letting go of the mental health term, so to speak. Because I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, everything he's saying is right, but I'm still wrestling. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Normally it goes away when you mention it. Like magic or something. Are you hearing me all right? Let me try to fix that. Okay. Better?
Okay. I'm still getting.
Okay.
No, it's gone now.
Okay.
Not
so
as bad.
What I was getting at is, when I never say or mention anything about mental health when I'm doing this, right? It's, you know, like I said, support systems to keep you strong and to keep you moving forward, you know, to you know, different things like that. And I think that may be a solution that can, you know, that we can offer it, unless, like, you know, you're really in an emergency situation, or, you know, you definitely need a clinician, you know, but actually start to think about different things that we can offer to the general public that are for their mental health. But however, we're not saying, hey, you need mental health help, come do this.
No. Brother, you hit the nail. You know, it's an interesting thing. Doc has a list of notes that we prepare for every show, and so, you know, you have just basically segued into the part of the show where, you know, that system of supports. And I love the way that you put that. You know, you're right. We need these systems of supports. And one of the things that I have realized as I've gotten older, what do those systems of support look like for various groups? You know, and so again, selfishly, what does that system of support look like for me? And so what we're doing here in New Orleans is that we're beginning supper clubs. And these supper clubs are basically an opportunity for men to get together, you know, because, you know, we always say, hey, you see somebody on the street, hey, man, we're going to get together. And we never do it.
Right.
And so this is an opportunity, that's going to be facilitated, with a group of men having dinner each month that we'll have these topics where we can discuss what's going on. The critical piece, though, is that in the beginning, you have to build that trust and safe space, and that's the biggest thing. But not even but. How do you do that? You break bread together. You have like-minded and sometimes even different-minded people together to basically talk through these things with a skilled facilitator that allows men to have their vulnerabilities come out. But you're right; it has to be these systems of support. It has to be in a safe space. We've talked about on one of our shows, Black Men's Healthy Relationships with Other Men, is that what I found in one of my good friends, he's 45, we're 5 days apart, but we have this ability now to talk to each other about a variety of things that, man, you would think that men just don't talk about, and it happened one day when he opened up the vulnerability and said, you know what, I'm experiencing this. And I'm like, wow, shit, so am I. And then all of a sudden the walls just fell down, and all of a sudden we have these vulnerable conversations. And he called the other day. He was like, hey man, what do you think about this? And so we had this hour-long conversation. That's our system of support right there.
And I think I just wanted to interject right there. You hit on a key point, is when he mentioned something that exposed his vulnerability, your reaction to it, like you said, let all the walls come down and let you really have that supportive relationship. And I think that's the key to having those kind of relationships and spaces, is when someone opens that door, welcome them in,
Exactly.
Yes. And so I think, especially as men, we may feel uncomfortable and we either say a joke or put the other person down, or like, oh, stop being whatever,
Right.
And we're just going to keep on acting like this is not happening and we all okay. But I think that you hit on that point right there, is where when the person opens up, let them know it's okay, and that you can relate.
I don't know if you. Oh, bad, Doc.
I'll just interject for a second. One thing that I've learned immensely, one of the many things I've learned immensely from doing this online platform for almost 10 years, many men have more things in common than they think they do. Yes. And we have to take the thought process, not what is different about that person. It's what do they have in common. Give them space. Let them tell some of their story, and you'll be amazed, because that may help them get out a little of a cycle that day, just that few minutes. There used to be a time where people said the thing that people want most is money. I don't think it's money. I don't think it's time. I think it's attention. And most men just want quality attention.
Yes, Doc, that's a great comment. And but we don't need, how do we say that? And how do we say that to another man with, because we're not schooled in that, in that ability to be vulnerable enough to say, I just need to talk it out, bro. I don't know if you all was on Twitter, maybe it was last weekend, or, Black Men's Greetings. Did y'all see the hashtag Black Men's Greetings?
No, I got to check it out.
Oh man, it's amazing. It is amazing just how we greet each other, and that's what
okay, hold on, Doc. I'm going to call you out. You know what I'm going to ask you?
What, Doc?
You owe an article about
the
that.
head nod.
Okay, we won't go any further. Keep on going.
About the head nod. But it's just interesting how we greet each other, and it's always, if you saw these greetings, they were very, very masculinated, and I don't even know if that's a word. I think I made that up, but it very masculinated, and oftentimes there was some sexual nature to it, how we're describing women, whatever, but it would be interesting in those Black Men's Greetings. How you doing, bruh? I'm a little, I'm not making it like I should be. Well,
I'm just laughing because it seems like, oh yeah, really? Why did you just say that? Like, I don't want to talk to you about that.
Exactly. Like, yeah, bro, I'm having a stressful day at work, bro. You got a minute?
Yeah.
Because as a Black man, there are times when stuff happens, stuff goes down at work, and you look around the sea of people at your job, and nobody looks like you. you know, nobody looks like you. What do you do then? You know, and so it's just a very interesting thing that you need people to talk through these things, man, because some days it gets crazy.
Oh yeah.
You know, we talk about some of the stressors that lead to mental health issues, discrimination on the job, workplace stressors. These lead to, you know, and who are you going to talk to?
Right.
So you hit the nail on the head, man. Systems of support.
It's true. It's important, and I think that we, Black men and men in general, a number of us have to be better listeners, not just with our head, but with our hearts.
No, I agree.
I think it's very important, and that's very, very important to listen, not with your and Glenn Barker from Mankind Project, and we've talked about this. There is a risk doing that, but a lot of times there's a bigger risk.
So what would the risk be? I'm curious. Of listening with your heart and actually just being there for people, you know.
There can be a risk because it may be more than you can handle.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, Dr. Vibe. You know, and because the funny thing is I've done that most of my life, and it becomes a burden after a while. But I know I'm that person for that person, right? I'm the only person that they can come and unpack their day and their life, and they would just call me, like you say, Dr. C, hey, yo, what up, C? This is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. I'm like, yeah, bro, it's tough, you know, blah, you know, and I'm like, and that's all they really need, right? You know, but now I'm learning, hey, I need to encourage people to have a support system, not a support person, just one person, right? And so, and you need to nurture those relationships and make sure that they're part of your life. And so, yeah, I think you're right, Dr. Vibe. It can be a burden just to be that person. And my problem was I was that person for almost everyone in my life, you know, and I didn't have that person for me. That was my issue, you know. It was like I'm having all this, everybody's weight is on my shoulder, you know, and I go pray about it, but still, I still got the weight, you know, and who's talking like, and what I guess the point I'm getting at here is make sure to make it a two-way street, or make sure, or have other people, because when I started to do that, you're like, huh, why are you telling me about your problem? I didn't tell you, I called you to tell me about my problem. You know, I'm like, well, I got issues too, you know, I need to talk too, you know. But you know, I had set up that pattern of behavior in some of my relationships. So I think it's good to have that balance.
I agree.
Well, Jonathan Cooper, you're jumping on near the tail end, but I know that you wanted to come in and share how we doing.
I apologize. I'm sorry it's so late.
It's okay. It's okay. Life happens, man. Hey, I'm listening with my heart. I'm here with my heart, brother. You're here. That's the most important thing. What do you want to contribute to the conversation?
Actually, it was a lot what you said the last time, Dr. Corprew, about dealing with depression and not really talking much about it. I myself, I deal with depression off and on again. And one thing that I found is that when I discuss it with people, some people receive it really well, some people don't. I remember when I told my mother, she got very religious on me. She just started speaking in tongues and saying, just saying.
I rebuke it in the name of Jesus.
That's exactly what she said. That was her exact words. But then when I sat down and talked to her about it, she was like, okay, I understand now. So some people, it takes them a while to get it. Others, I don't know.
Well, some people never get it, and unfortunately, that's too bad. But for the ones that do get it, I cling tight to. And here's a funny thing. I'm the number of people I'm mentoring is growing. Don't know why, but the majority of the people I'm mentoring are women, not men.
Did we talk about?
So don't tell me the women are going through more challenges than men are. That ain't true.
I think it goes back to the wanting to ask for help, you know, and especially from another man, you know, it's It is challenging. Like when he Jonathan mentioned he was talking to his mother about it. That made sense to me. You know, we're always going to be more comfortable talking to our mom about our problems than our dad. You know, our dad's like, because I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing or just a man thing.
Fuck that up.
The man, you know, exactly. You got to be a man, boy. What's your problem? You know, get it. You know, and so that's kind of like the general reaction. But taking even that to the side, you know, like Dr. Vibe, you know, I recognize he has a lot of wisdom. Still, I would be more challenged to ask him to be a mentor than I would for some women's support. You know, because I don't know, maybe it's just a natural, and because often also we always get better responses from women. You know, when we ask for support, maybe it's their nature, or I don't know.
It's that nurturing feeling that, you know, women give. You know, mothers will raise their sons, you know, and so they, you know, and so it's interesting, Jonathan, that you say what you and C will as well, is that if I have an issue, the first thing that my mother says is, you need to pray about it. You know, that's the first thing she goes to. You need to pray about it. This is what you need to do. I said, Mother, I understand that. I also need some other things, support mechanism to help me get through this. I understand that. And so I go, you know, my mother hates this. She's like, I said, faith without works is dead. And so I said, you know, I need, you know, I've got to have faith, but I have to also have some tangible things to work on to help me get through this. And so that's what I need to hear from you during this period of time. I understand. So I know the first thing I said, Mom, so how about we just, I know what you're going to say first. Let's move to the second thing.
The second thing, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm past that. I'm past the prayer point.
Yeah,
I need more than that.
Exactly.
I need the answer to my prayer, and I think this is where we, especially people, you know, really into the church, I think they miss the boat a little bit. Is, you know, God is meant to work through people according to, you know, their teaching, and I'm asking you to help me, right? And so. You know, we often say, you know, oh, God do this, God do that. And when God starts to working through people, we're like, oh, no, I didn't actually mean a human to help me. I want, you know, some light to fall from the sky.
Right.
But, you know, it's that is the application of that prayer. Right. You know, and so, yeah, I definitely feel you, Dr. C, as far as that is concerned. And to go back to what Jonathan was saying about some people don't get it. That's how you kind of filter who are your support people, right? Because if they're going to just throw you under the bus or reject your vulnerability, then that's not the right team, so to speak, to have.
That's a great comment. You got to have your team. And we've got to try to instill in men to put your team together. Not just sports team, but your emotional team. The people who you're going to trust. You know, and who you will listen to. That's the thing as well. You know, and that's where that trust, I'm going to listen to you, you know, no matter what. But the key is, and both of you have mentioned that, is that as we get older, we're the mentor. But we still need people to help us.
Right.
You know, because like you said, if you got all these mentors, and see, Will, you've got all these, mentees, who's giving to you? Who's feeding you as well? And we need to be fed.
I have that. I'm a sandwich guy. I've got some bread on top of me and some bread in the underneath me. So I'm good with that, because I realize that, as I say all the time, last I checked, it took two people to get you into this world. So why are you trying to break that cycle?
And that's one of the things that, as I build this business, Doc, I'm still looking for that mentor for myself, you know, that I can talk through things, you know. I'm a scientist at the end of the day. Running a business is not in my purview. So I'm trying to learn and figure all this out at the same time. And it's stressful. You know, it's stressful. It's good, but it's stressful. And so we have to think through that. How are our support systems? Who are the people that are going to give us what we need as much as we're giving to them? Like you said, it's a two-way street, Doc.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour, Dr. C. Did you cover everything you wanted, or we wanted to cover? And how do we help Black men cope with these?
Drop some signs, drop some knowledge on us, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great,
Excellent.
and I appreciate you. I'm gonna step out if anybody else wants to jump in, but I really appreciated it. I'll still hang around. Thanks, guys.
Take care, brother. Thank you.
Right. Be well and keep the faith. Well, Dr. C, as I said, it's just past the top of the hour, and I know you're very time sensitive. So just want to make sure that you covered everything you wanted in this part. So any closing comments you have this evening?
I want to thank C. Will and Jonathan for coming on. I want to thank you, Doc, always as being a gracious host, and getting us through some topics that, again, are important for us to be discussed, through this medium. Hopefully people will use these conversations and see as tools, to put them in their toolbox to be able to go to and say, you know what, this is how I can handle things. If I need help, how can I go get it? I think the biggest thing that came out of this today, and C. Will talked about, is that how can you identify your systems of support and be vulnerable enough to say that you need help and ask for it, to get out of your man box and say, I need some help, and to listen and be open when somebody says to you, I got something going on. Give them what they need, because there will be that opportunity when you need somebody to listen and give you what you need. So just make sure you're giving as much as you receive.
Yeah, don't be a gimme person, because you know what'll happen? You're going to live a lonely life. So on that note, Dr. C, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Email me at Dr. Charles Corprew, CORPREW @gmail.com, or you can tweet me at WY Revolution, and I'll type it into the sidebar, Doc.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank everyone who dropped by, even if it was for a few seconds this evening on the conversation. We got Clive Henry on from Periscope from Nottingham, England, who's like 5 hours ahead of us, which is very cool. But yeah, Clive, good stuff. One of the regulars for the last 3 years on the Dr. Vibe show. For myself, there's a number of thoughts going through my head, but I'll just put out one or two of them. One of the things that a long time ago we were doing a show on mental health, and a gentleman said on the show is that, especially for men, is that when you see another man, either give him the head nod or give him a pat on the back, because sometimes that may give him the energy to live another day.
That is true, Doc. And I had a friend commit suicide last week, and I saw him one day going across the parking lot, and I didn't get a chance to say something to him. And it has stuck with me since I heard about his death, that in that moment, I didn't get a chance to at least, acknowledge him and have a short conversation with him. So sometimes we need to stop moving so fast that we make sure that we acknowledge each other. So that's a great comment, Doc.
And I just add to that, sometimes we need to slow down and enjoy our truth. We need to just slow down and enjoy our truth, because I had a similar situation happen many years ago with a younger man that I was mentoring. He committed suicide. I didn't even know he was going on with depression. He committed suicide while he was getting treatment in a hospital. And that shook my world. That was one of the first times I really had face to face of what depression, especially in young people. He was like 24 years old. And believe me, one of the toughest things for me to do was look at his phone number in my phone and know that I couldn't call him. And I didn't have a chance. He didn't open up to me what he was going through. We have to realize, men, and those who love us, men do not live as long on average as women. So I encourage you with this question. If you're a man, when you're going through a challenge, do you have someone you can turn to? Do you have a man you can turn to? If you don't, I hope and pray, and I honestly mean, I hope and pray that you find that person. And if you're really desperate, you can contact me. Or Dr. Charles. Dr. Charles is the clinical head. I'm one of his nubiles. Let's put it that way.
I'm a developmental psychologist. I just want to put that out there. I am not licensed. I can point people in the right direction.
I'm not. You know what? I'm just a guy, and I do have a certification in life coaching, which doesn't make me a psychologist, but I've heard enough and been through enough that I can. If I can't help you, I will direct someone who will help you. One of the great people is actually on this call right now, Glenn Barker from the Mankind Project.
And thank you for
that man has done. Yeah, that man has done men's weekends with probably over at least 10,000 men. There's a man that I go to. So I hope that each one of you has some, if you're a man, you have someone to go to when things go dark, when you're in your cave for more than 2 days, whether it's a physical cave or a mental cave. Please don't get stuck there, because most men in the long run are not good alone. On that note, as always, I'd like to say thanks to everyone for taking time in their positive, productive schedule to share with us. I'm Dr. Vibe. As always, I like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles. You're a solution for someone's problem. Yes, I know that by heart now. We'll be back with this series again in 2 weeks. I'm going to put up, and if you have a moment, I've put a link on the side. It is a 2-minute survey. If you can just give some feedback on tonight's conversation, it is appreciated, not taken for granted. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith.
Good night, Darren.
And bye-bye.